guys, welcome back to the Land Talk Podcast. We are here on episode 14. We're dealing with kind of some more issues that a lot of folks run into in rural landscapes when they buy property. And today we're going to be talking about water wells. So with me today, I've got Joel Pigg. Joel, kind of give us a rundown. We've been friends for a few years now. I know we obviously talk a lot about a different stuff, but you have an interesting job and kind of an interesting role. So kind of give me the rundown of who you are and what you do.
Hey, my name is Joel Pigg. I am with AgriLife Extension out of A&M, based in College Station. And the program that I work is the Texas Well Owner Network. We go around the state of Texas, get people to bring water samples in from their private water wells, and we test those wells or screen those wells for drinking water standard constituents, which would be like your nitrate levels, your salinity of your water sample. We look at absence or presence of coliform bacteria, absence or presence of E. coli bacteria, and then we also look at arsenic levels in aquifers that dictate that. So we are a statewide type program. So today I may be in Central Texas. Next week I may be in West Texas. Last week I was in East Texas. So we try to go as many places. There's two of us that are running this program right now. As we know, Texas is a fairly large state, so it's really hard for us to get everywhere that we would like to go, but we try to cover as many counties and as many locations on an annual basis because water quality and water issues are, in my mind, one of the biggest things that we have going on across the state that may not be as the water may not be as good as we like it.
Right.
So,
right. And so your job is just to bring public awareness. Would that be like the
we do
domain?
so we do water quality, and then we have an educational program that goes along with that because we can give you results all day long. And if you're just a mom and pop that don't really, you know that you needed to get your water tested, but you don't know what those results mean, we have an educational program that goes along with it to explain the results that we see. Typically, we do about 1,000 to 1,500 samples per year.
Right.
So we get a pretty good interest in our programs, and we do have the educational side. That's, the extension side of it. Y'all know the extension agents here locally in Milam County. I was actually one of those guys back in 97, 98, 99.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just going from the local county extension side of it to the specialist side of it so that we are actually just concentrating on one program, and water quality is that program that I look at.
Right. But working for A&M, you're kind of a middleman between the A&M system and the people, just like the
for sure. We are
an extension agent would be. So
my general population is not 4-H youth kids.
Mhm.
Most of mine is the adult population. Probably thinking about podcasts. Probably some of you folks, your parents and grandparents, are the ones that are going to come in to think about this water quality. When you start getting a little older, more mature, you start thinking about those water quality issues as your health starts fluctuating.
right.
So we want to make sure that the water quality that you are consuming from that private well on your property is of good enough quality that you're not going to get sick when the grandkids come to the house for the summer.
Right.
That you're not going to get the grandkids sick. We want
Right.
to make sure everybody is healthy and drinking good water.
And I think we've got to take it for granted. I mean, when I turn my water, I don't. The first thing that crosses my mind is I need the water. That's not really. Is this safe? I assume it's safe, and I know. Obviously, we're going to kind of get this a little more. But we know that your local water sources like municipal water and stuff. They do some stuff, but to your point earlier, water well owners are not required or demanded to do any kind of testing. So I know that's kind of a different can of worms there. So
Well, so as you were saying, John, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality requires that public water supplies, anybody that's selling water for consumption on an annual or on a monthly basis, have that water tested to make sure that it does meet drinking water standards. No one is going to come onto your private property and say, "Hey, have you tested your water? Make sure it is of quality to drink."
right.
In my programs, first thing I'm asked typically when I do a program is, when was the last time you had your water tested for drinking water issues?
Mm-hmm.
Number one answer is, I have never tested it.
Right.
It still tastes the same today as it did the day I drilled my well. I don't need to test it because it's good.
Sure.
However, the things that we are looking for, screening for in these programs that I do, the bacteria we're looking at are colorless, odorless, and tasteless.
Right.
We don't know that they're there unless we do a test for them. So that's where we bring in that water quality issue to make sure that people are testing that water, screening that water. We don't call it a testing in the procedure that I do. We are not a certified lab. I have a portable lab system that I carry everywhere I go. So, a certified lab in my mind is one of those that's there every time, every day in the same building. They do the same thing day after day. My stuff is portable so that I can go to Midland County today. I can go to Bowie County tomorrow. I can be in Taylor or Williamson County next week.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's just, we feel very comfortable. We've had our test run against a certified lab to make sure that the results are very similar.
Right.
And whenever we do a couple of thousand of them a year, we feel very comfortable with the results. We tell people what we show them. So we feel good about giving them information. So we think we're doing a good service for the state of Texas and trying to get this water quality issue forefront for those private well owners.
For sure. And I think it's easy to know there's a problem when your water is dirty or it smells different. But to your point, if you don't have those cues, it's going to be really hard to find out.
And that's my teaching point is if you have a private well and you see a change in color, odor, or taste, it is time to get a well test done to make sure that the water is of quality to drink.
Right.
So I know we had talked about some of the talking points. So our program recommends on an annual basis testing your private well for bacteria. The nitrate levels, the salinity, the pH of your well is not going to fluctuate much over time. However, with the aquifers we've got in Texas, bacteria may be here today, it may be gone tomorrow, and it may be back after this first rain.
Right.
Yesterday, after we got 2.5 inches of rain from College Station to Rockdale, now would probably be a good time to start thinking about those wells. Anything that was in a low area that is prone to flooding, you may have got some contamination into your well with that water coming up just a little bit.
Sure.
So we recommend if there's a significant weather event, get that well checked just to make sure everything is still good. Our aquifers are under stress right now. We've been pretty dry for a few months. So
Yeah.
as we get drier and drier, that's a breeding ground for some of the bacteria. So
Sure.
everything flushes out. If it's getting rain on top of the ground, we can count on a little bit of water permeating into the wells. So, in Texas, everything moves to the southeast. So whenever we start thinking about wells on our private property, our recommendations for wells are put your well in the northwest corner of your property. We want to make sure that you are 50 feet off the property line, which is a state rule. We want to make sure that you're 100 feet from your well to your septic system. Again, we want that septic system to the south and to the east if at all possible. And we do that because everything in Texas, again, flows on the surface and underground, flows downhill towards the Gulf.
Right.
So if you keep that septic down gradient from your well, we're not going to have those contamination issues that we could possibly have.
Right. Right. So thinking about water wells, and we're going to kind of back up here to just really generically speaking. So you kind of mentioned where to place it on your property. What about just from the big perspective? Where thinking of water wells, are there areas that you can't do a water well? Are there areas that don't have water? Kind of give us a big 10,000-foot overview of what areas you can or can't drill water in, and how do you find out?
Okay, so if I was going to drill a well in any location, the first call I'm going to make is to the local groundwater conservation district, if there is one. They're going to have maps and well logs of what's going on within those county boundaries.
Sure.
They're going to be the local expert that knows what's going on. So that's the first call I'm going to make. I moved to College Station from the hill country out of Leakey, Texas. So a lot of y'all may not know where Leakey's at. We're 90 miles west of San Antonio.
That's Leakey for people who don't know how to pronounce it.
There you go. So out there in that country, we have a limestone aquifer. You can drill a hole and you may or may not hit water. So if I was going to drill a well in the western part of the hill country, I'm going to get my water well. I'm going to go find me a witcher.
Sure.
Now, I don't know if anybody believes in water witching. I've watched it done. I'm going to spend the money to get those witchers out there to find the water on my property.
Yeah.
Because at $25 to $35 a foot to drill a well and get it cased and get everything working on it, you're talking a significant $15,000 to $25,000 investment to get that well operating.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be able to spend $25,000 to drill a dry hole.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I get water. So I'm going to get those guys to come out and witch, find the spot. Here in Midland County, it's been a while since I've been here. I would think that it's more one of those deals. You can drill a well in quite a few of the locations across the county. There may be some dry pockets, but you could pretty well drill a hole and you're going to hit some kind of water.
And I'll kind of give you a pitch there. You're speaking about water runs in the southeast. The water wells in the southeast of our county are better. As you go northwest, I mean, there's a lot of areas. You're number one. You're probably going to find water, and I kind of relate that, at least in our county. So Mon County to me is kind of a weird county because it gets split between let's say roughly half of it's black land to the north, and then you get more post oak sand to the south. It changes from black dirt into sandy loam. And kind of my general rule of thumb is if you're in that black land north, good luck. You might get it, you might not.
Good tight dirt.
I tell a lot of folks around here, if you find it, you may not want it. So you may be able to get water at 30 foot in the black land. You may not want to drink it. I probably wouldn't. So, shallow water is good, but that doesn't mean it's usable and drinkable.
Well, think about it.
So
if you're talking about water quality, which water is going to be the easiest to contaminate by the foolish things
For
that
sure.
we as humans do?
For sure.
That water in that first 50 foot of soil is
Yeah.
going to be the ones that we contaminate and really mess up.
Yeah.
You get deeper water, quality should be better and harder for us to contaminate. I mean, there's pockets of it that are gym water, that are sulfur water, right?
Trap,
There's all kinds of things, but
typically around here, like Rockdale headed south, for the most part, you've got two water pockets around here. One's about 300 foot or so, and then you get a really good one about 800 foot. That's the better water. But our water tends a lot, but I know some people on the east side of the county, they can get really good water 100 foot. So I guess to that point, it's kind of hard to know. So you're going to have to get somebody to tell you where the water's at. The post-oak ground, like the groundwater conservations are great. I know there's some online well logs that are show who did what and how deep, and usually they'll give the well log and what the hit and how deep and all that kind of stuff.
And I recommend, I'll share with John some PDFs that I've got, but one site that does have that information on it is the Texas Water Development Board Well ID site.
Yep.
If you get in that and pull it into your location where you live, there's going to be a little dot that represents a well.
Yeah.
Pull those wells up.
Orange dots everywhere.
Orange dots or purple dots. Pull those things up, click on them, it will give you a well log and tell you information about that well. And I use that every day for the programs that I do.
And people call me all the time asking, well, if I was probably going to dig a well, and I said, my answer is I don't know. Now, I think selling stuff around here enough, I start to quickly figure out where there's water, where there's not. But I've been on that website a lot. That's a really helpful thing to show that, hey, Bob next door drilled a well at 520 foot and it flowed this much per minute, whatever it is. So I think those are good. I call some of the local water well guys. Those guys will kind of give you a lot of free information. They'll tell you, hey, we've drilled, they kind of know some off the cuff, probably not as particular, but those guys that have drilled a lot of wells around here, they know where they can and can't go most of the time.
They are experts at what they do.
But that being said, I think I kind of want to point out just that sometimes just because there is water doesn't mean that it's viable water.
True.
And I think just think of the north end of our county, you get a lot more water lines from different local water suppliers, and there's a reason for that because that's more guaranteed than local groundwater, and wherever they're getting that water from is probably, it could be 10 or 15 miles away. I mean, there's some water companies around here that get water from groundwater and they get it out of Stillhouse Hollow, right? So they're using lake water and groundwater from some other site. So, but I think, water's important. I mean, one of the biggest factors in buying a property is if I'm gonna try and build a house there or live there or whatever, water's a huge deal. That's probably one of the biggest selling points. If I say, hey, there's no groundwater and there's no water line along the road, then you're going to like rainwater harvesting, which I think some spots that's really effective, but it's just scary. It's with rain.
In Texas.
I think it could work, but that's a scary thing after they get to rely on rainfall. So, what about? So if I buy a property and I want to dig a water well, kind of run me through just the general next steps of, okay, I've talked to the groundwater conservation district. I know I can dig one. Kind of where do you head next?
Okay, so in a county that does have a groundwater conservation district, you have to get an okay from them to drill a well, which if you're using it for domestic and livestock uses, there's not going to be any objections to it. They're going to let you drill that.
Right.
The problem comes if you're going to try to irrigate a hay meadow or something where you're going to use some artificial water.
Commercial volumes.
So once you have that, then we have to go through a certain process. But domestic and livestock wells, you get an okay for that because they want you to be able to get water for your well or for your house. The next step would be contacting a local driller to get that operation started. So another website that we do use very regularly is the Texas Department of License and Regulation License Search. They've got a drop-down menu on that website. One of the options is well drillers, pump installers, and then you can choose by county. So you can go to well drillers, Milo County, click on the search, and it's going to bring up all the drillers that are licensed within Milo County, realizing that you can get your driller out of Bell County, you can get them out of Lee County, but if they're licensed in Milo County, that means that that's where their business is operating from.
Right.
Okay. Also, you need to look at the credentials that they've got license for on that site. A lot of these guys are licensed to drill wells and to also install pumps. Some of these guys are only licensed to drill, some of them are only pump installation guys. So if you will hire a pump guy to drill a well, he can't do that legally.
Right.
Make sure that you hire the correct person for the job that you are needing on that property. Make sure that they are their license is in good standing. But if you're going to have somebody work on your well, on your water, on your property, then you want to make sure that they do have a license. Just because your brother-in-law works for the oil company and they said he could take the drilling rig home for the weekend, do you really want him to do that, even though he may or may not know how to drill? I mean, I've watched lots of water well drillers do their work, and those guys are amazing. They can tell by the hum of the rig what's going on underneath, 300 foot underground.
Sure.
They are amazing to watch and know what's going on. They've got that technique where, John, if we sat down and tried to drill a hole, we could probably drill a hole, but we're probably going to mess up more than we fix.
Yeah, for sure.
So we want that guy that has that local expertise and can put that hole in the ground for us.
And I guess typically speaking, if you're drilling a well for a house, I mean, most of the time those are like a 4-inch casing. Is that probably the most common size, or what are you seeing?
Most of the stuff that I see is probably 5-inch casing.
5-inch now. Okay.
So another thing, I'm going to give you a couple of things that are state regulations for drilling a well for well completion.
Right.
So if you have a well drilled, they're going to drill probably a 6 to 8-inch hole. They're going to drop in a 5-inch piece of casing.
Yeah.
So think about the space between the outside of the casing and the dirt. You're going to have an angular space, which is that airspace.
Right.
We want a minimum of 10 feet holding your casing in place. Because if you don't have that casing in place, if they come out to do some work on it, give it a little tug, they pull everything out of the ground. That tells me everything comes out of the ground, so something's broke.
Yeah.
So we have to have 10 feet of angular cement for completion job across the state. We would like to have a concrete apron around our well head.
How big do you want that?
2 feet in all directions, highest point at the well head, kind of sloping down the way.
Yeah.
I want a minimum of 1 foot of casing coming out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
If I live in a bottom here in Milam County and I know that it floods 2 foot every time that it rains, I want maybe 2, maybe 3 foot. I want a foot above.
So you don't want water running down.
I don't want water getting in there every time I have a storm and contaminating my well. I want it above that floodplain.
Yeah.
So that's 1 foot is the state regulation, but my go-to method is 1 foot above where I know it floods all the time. So those 3 things are state minimum qualifications to have a well completed in the state right now.
Right. And I guess along the lines of construction, I mean, in a perfect world, I've seen wells just out in middle pasture, but in a perfect world, you want them covered with a building. It would be ideal to have them insulated. There's some stuff there too, right?
Think about one of my slides that I do at my presentations is we start talking about well heads. So if I'm going to have a well out in the middle of a pasture, I am probably going to want that to be a piece of steel coming out of the ground instead of a PVC casing.
It won't freeze or something.
Well, thinking about some of these guys that are out there shredding and doing things around cows. How long is a piece of PVC going to withhold or withstand a shredder or a cow?
And just repeated elements.
So a piece of steel is going to last longer, be held up to those elements a lot better.
Yeah.
So if I've got a pasture well where I may not want to put that cement around it, I am probably going to want to have steel casing. My first pipe into the ground would be steel.
Yeah.
If I've got one at the house where I can keep it, in a well house in the barn, wherever I've got it, plastic doesn't concern me. But if I had a $35,000 well with my shredder and it tears my well off at the ground, I've got major problems.
Yeah.
If I had a piece of steel with my shredder, maybe $400 to fix my shredder, but that's a whole lot cheaper than drilling a new well.
Yeah, for sure. And we get a lot of water wells that we see that are not very well maintained. I mean, they're not covered. They, it gets hard in the wintertime to kind of make sure things don't freeze. Some people put heaters. There's probably some good practices there as far as keeping those things insulated out of the elements and your pressure tank and all that stuff kind of protected. So, are y'all seeing? And we're talking about, I guess, residential use here, but what about just for livestock uses? Are y'all seeing more people using solar wells? I mean, obviously we used to use windmills. I only know of a handful of windmills around here now. So
it's harder to find people who will maintain and work on those windmills. That's profession that, you got to be pretty specific
Yeah,
about
it's
your
kind of a
knowledge.
dying breed. I mean,
For sure.
there's still a lot in the hill country, but just around here you don't find it.
The thing I've seen about solar is, in the 80s and 90s, solar was kind of new. People didn't think about solar. The technology was not as good. In the last 5 to 10 years, the technology has really increased on solar, so it's more of a viable. In the 90s, out in the hill country, you could get them to move electrical poles in for $100 a
Yeah,
piece.
yeah,
Now they're $1,000, $1,500
yeah,
a piece. So
yeah,
whenever the prices dictate, we change our innovations and we start going more solar, and it is a more viable option than it has
yeah,
been in the past.
yeah. And I've even had some people that have been on windmills forever and they're swapping to solar. I mean, I think it's just the time has come where I think solar isn't efficient enough to probably operate a water wheel. And that's a good thing. I mean, I think we do get some properties that are way off the middle of nowhere and there's no way you're getting power to them feasibly. And, I think it's good to have,
We like to
have
be off the
solar.
grid.
That's it. That's it. There's some people who want to be off the grid. So that's all good. So, okay. So now we've got our well drilled. So kind of jump back in where we started. What are, I mean, I know I'll just speak personally. I had a well some years ago on a property that we listed that the folks had a loan, they got a VA loan. That particular lender required they come in and test the well, and actually they found that there was something in the well that was bad. So, I guess that being said, what what are some of the worst offenders as far as what you're finding? Because I mean, I think that time that we did it was E. coli, which that's a terrible, scary word, right? So, what are kind of your worst offenders that you see if you do see anything bad?
Okay, so depending on where you're at, like we did a well screening program in the Rolling Plains up around Vernon. So in that country up there, they've got lots of row cropping. They had used the heck out of nitrogen fertilizers. The nitrate levels in that water is off the charts. Where here in my own county, we're probably most of the wells we're going to test are going to be in pretty good shape. Out there, there was stuff that was way off the charts, way above drinking water standards. Okay, whenever you go to the Permian Basin and into deep South Texas along the valley, you've got arsenic issues within the aquifer. So it's very common to have arsenic that is well above drinking water standards there as well. We're going to see in the wells that we screen on an annual basis, we probably see 40 to 55% of the wells will test positive for coliform bacteria. Coliform bacteria tells me you live in Texas. It tells me that you are dry. If it's dry on the top of the ground, it's going to be dry under the ground. So coliform does not concern me. That's one of those things that I tell people. This is where you be vigilant about what's going on with your well. You make sure that it is, if it changes color, odor, taste, you get it tested again to make sure what's going on with it. The big thing that we are testing for would be the E. coli bacteria. That's the ones, you've always been told your whole life. I know if you go to Mexico, don't drink the water because there's stuff in it.
Montezuma's revenge, right?
So, same thing. If you live in Houston, Texas, and you come to the ranch here in Rockdale and you go out there and drink the water, you may get a little queasy for a couple of days because you're used to drinking treated water from the Harris County or Houston water supply.
Right.
You come out here drinking water straight out of the ground. It doesn't have any kind of chlorination, doesn't have any kind of treatment. It's going to make you a little queasy because it takes you a little while to get the microbes built up in your stomach.
For sure.
If you're out here for the summer on the ranch, then you go back to Houston. Same thing. It takes you a few days to get used to that chlorinated water supply, so it will mess with your stomach a little bit.
Right. So when you run into some problem, let's say you do find some things that aren't supposed to be in there, what are kind of, we don't have to go on the whole long road here, but like what are some remedies if you did find coliform, you found this or that? I mean, what are some fixes and kind of like how big or bad could those be?
Well, to go along the lines that you want to go, if you've got a livestock well and you bring that sample into us and it tests positive for E. coli bacteria, I'm gonna say, John, don't treat this well. It's the livestock, the cows,
they have different rules.
The cows are drinking it. It don't matter. They're fine. They got a different kind of stomach. They're good to go. Now, I did a program in Williamson County a few years ago. Lady came in, hers tested positive for everything that you could test positive for. I asked her, is this your drinking water? Well, I've been drinking this water my whole life and it's still good. It's not bothering me. But she's on a respirator. She's doesn't look healthy. Tested this water. It tested positive for coliform. It tested positive for E. coli. The nitrate levels were up. It's like you need to figure out what's going on with this well. We need to get it remedied before you keep drinking it.
Sure.
So a lot of times what I'm going to ask people is, well, a couple of things. if you bring a water sample to us, I want the water sample to come as close to the well as you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also want you to bring me a sample after your treatment system if you have one. Why do you think I need that, John?
Yeah, you want to know the difference between the two, right?
Well, you want to, if you're paying for treatment on your well,
Yeah,
you
is
want
it
to make
working?
sure that it is working,
Yeah.
that you're getting the proper results out of it.
Sure.
I run into many little widowed ladies that come in there. The husband passed away in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
He was responsible for changing the chlorinator, doing all that stuff for that well. And I asked her, when was the last time this was done? She goes, he never told me I was supposed to do that.
Didn't know it existed. Yeah.
We don't know that we're supposed to do that. If we're supposed to back flush these systems, then we need to make sure that they're done on a regular basis. So I've seen more positives for E. coli come after a treatment system than from the raw water that came into this.
Because I guess it's housing that. Sometimes those things can house that.
Well, it's the housing. It is a lot of the things that we see issues with is the sampling technique that people use.
Mm-hmm.
We recommend that you don't take a sample from the kitchen sink in the house.
Right.
You know, everybody, we've got those little aerators on that kitchen sink. How many times have we been frying up hamburger meat and throw that frying pan up there and it splashes grease and it splashes blood on the aerator? Did we take time to take that aerator out and clean it out? No, we didn't.
Yeah.
So if we take a sample out in the backyard, we want to make sure that we take the water hose off of it because there's no telling what bacteria is growing in that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if the dog just licked the fountain or the water hose. So we want to, a lot of the samples that I see that do come back positive are from operator error, not necessarily that there's E. coli present. So the thing I tell you people about their wellheads, you know, we've got people that'll tell you don't do any kind of treatment around your wellhead, don't put any Roundup, don't put any fire in bait. I'm going to tell you follow legal directions and treat around that wellhead, control around that controller box, around that pressure tank. Because y'all all know if you've got a well or a septic system on your place, where do the fire ants and the wasps like to go?
Yeah, they're going there.
They're going right for those electrical boxes. So treat around those things to keep those critters away.
Yeah.
Try to winterize that well house early. We've got bipolar weather here in Texas. We get freeze anywhere from October through April.
Sure.
So be ready to go in there and flip the switch and turn the heat lamps on. Because if you wait till the day before it's supposed to freeze, they already hit the True Value hardware store or the lumber yard and everything is gone. So do it early, be ready, be prepared.
For sure. So on your water well, how often do you recommend obviously there's no rules, right? But what's y'all's recommendation as far as how often to test your private water well?
For our program, we recommend annual testing for the bacteria, the E. coli and coliform bacteria. I don't think that nitrate levels, pH, salinity doesn't change a whole lot over time unless we are just super saturated. It may change a little bit.
Yeah.
But the bacteria can come in here and be there. They may not be here today when we test it, but if we test it tomorrow, something may grow in there. So
right.
Annual for any kind of bacteria.
Sure. So if they want to test their well on an annual basis, what's the process? Do they come find a program like yours? Do they go to the extension? Where do they go to do that? And how much does it cost?
Okay, so now that you mentioned it, we got a program coming up here in Western Milam and Williamson County on Thursday, June the 12th and Friday, June the 13th. On the 12th, from 8:30 to 10, you can drop off samples at the Stiles Farm headquarters, and we will be there to process those samples. And then we're having an educational program from 1 to 5 o'clock at the Dickey Gibbons Community Center in Taylor. We're going to go through water quality. We're going to go through Water Wells 101. We're going to go aquifers. We're going to do water treatment, water. We have an hour on septics because generally speaking, people that have a water well on their property do have a septic system. Yeah. So we're going to tell them about how those things interact and what we need to know about those.
Sure.
So whenever we do a program, we charge $15 per sample whenever they come into us. And I encourage people to bring as many samples as they would like. If you've got 6 wells, bring one from each well. If you've got treatment systems on it, bring one before it, after it. We will test whatever comes in, but we think that it just gives you that background information and lets you know what's going on. You know, for your $30,000 investment, you see a piece of pipe coming out of the ground, you see a pressure tank, you don't know what's going on 300 foot under the ground.
Yeah.
So this is where we can kind of come along and show you what that water is, what it looks like.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a great tool. And so let's argue they missed your thing. Where do they go? Like if it's 6 months from now,
Okay,
what's
so
another avenue?
Post Oak Savannah Groundwater District does their water summit every summer.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a Caldwell generally.
if you take a water sample of those guys, they will actually run the bacteria test there in their office. They're going to give you a general water chemistry that they send to the A&M soil, water, and forage testing lab. And I think it's at no cost to people that have a well or that live within the district. Take advantage of Post Oak and get those water samples done.
Sure.
It is a great thing to know that water chemistry, especially in Milan, Burleson, whenever you've got oil exploration going on. You need to know what that general chemistry is in case something goes south. Then, get your word against the oil companies, and they've usually got a bigger checkbook than you got, so they might win that battle. But if you've got some general chemistry, that baseline data,
For
it's
sure.
a good thing to have.
No, it'd be nice if you ran into problems with a neighbor or a different use next door, or it used to be farm and now it's commercial or whatever.
Right.
It'd be nice to be, well, I have got 10 years of data, something changed, and this is clearly related to this. That's a good thing.
Yes.
Back to the groundwater conservation district. I mean, we have one here. I know there's some counties that don't have one, but there's getting to be a lot more of them. But the other cool thing I thought about them, which they have a bunch of programs, and the couple that come to mind that I don't think people know about a whole lot is number one, and this may vary from time to time. I'm sure it's on grants and funding and stuff. I don't know if it's a permanent program, but the one here, they have some different programs for getting like free or highly reduced pricing on rainwater harvesting systems, which is really cool. I know some people that got 4,000 gallons of tanks that they can water and irrigate, and I think it was free or largely free. So that's kind of a cool program. And then the other one, just speaking, which we're gonna get to in the next episode, but getting into water rights, I know Post Oak Groundwater Conservation District here locally has a program in place to where they will pay you to not lease your water to a water company. So, those things pay up to like $25 per acre per year to convince you not to lease that to them. And that's just free money. You don't have to do anything with it. It doesn't tie up your title. It's not going to show up on your title work later. It's not going to encumber you or mess up a sale. It goes person to person. So if I get into that lease and I sell the property, the next guy can get out or he can stay in. So that's kind of a cool program there. And obviously their job is to conserve water and hopefully make decisions and implement rules to keep people from taking advantage of groundwater. So, we'll kind of end on this note, but right now, water, we're going to go to the next episode on this, but water's getting scarier and scarier. It's getting more buzzword. Right now, obviously, we know the water conservation district kind of manages permitting and stuff, but do you have any predictions on the future as far as water wells? Are those rules going to change? Do you think the state's ever going to step in and take kind of a more direct role in governing what you can do with your water well and how you can use it? I mean, what do you kind of see on a personal water well level, but for the future as far as governing?
Well, every district right now in the state, the state's divided into groundwater management areas. There's 13 of those, and then there are also regional planning groups. And what those groups are trying to do is establish desired future conditions so that we are looking 30, 40, 50 years down the road to make sure that there will be water for our kids and our grandkids. Mm-hmm. So they're coming up with conservation plans. They're coming up with water use plans to make sure that we're not using everything up, that there will be water available in that 2070 time frame.
Sure.
So it's something that we all need to consider and think about. We don't necessarily have to have the greenest lawn. If you live out in a rural setting, you don't need your whole 50 acres to be green. We need to go back to some of that native type plants. We do want a little bit of green lawn around the yard as a fire buffer just to keep anything from happening. Because, we do live in Texas. We are prone to a few wildfires.
Sure.
So make sure that we are thinking things through to conserve and watch what's going on. We want, that house has been in the house or in the family for a while. We want to keep it there. So we want to make sure that it doesn't burn if something comes up.
Yeah. And I just kind of wonder, like, from a governing standpoint of how much more of a role the state will take on private water wells. And I don't know the answer to that, but I think as water gets more scarce, my answer has to be they're going to take more.
They're going to try. I mean, right now, the rule of capture is what prevails in Texas. As of today, the state prefers local management for groundwater issues. They don't want to put a state agency in charge of all the groundwater to be making those decisions. Post Oak Savannah has got local directors out of Burleson and Milam County that are farmers, ranchers, businessmen that are local people that have been elected to those posts. They're your friends, your neighbors. Would you rather have those friends and neighbors in charge of that, or a state agency that doesn't really care about Milam County that's just making a set of cookie cutter rules for the whole state?
For sure.
With local control, they are doing things that really are meaningful, that stay close to home, that they can make those decisions because they don't want to go to the coffee shop and get you out of their neighbor.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But I tell people if you're gonna drill water well, drill it now. That's the same.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, there may come a time to where things are tougher and harder, and it's like if you're gonna get one, it's probably the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. Same thing on water wells. The best time to drill water wells is probably now.
And I bet you, John, we could walk out of this building right here where we're at today, a mile in any direction, and come across an abandoned water well.
Sure.
We could probably come across several hand dug wells here within the city limits of Rockville. So we do know that there are lots of wells that are out there, a lot of them that are abandoned or no longer in use. If you have an abandoned well on your property and you know it's dry hole and it's just a big pit, we need to make sure that we are backfilling that thing, plugging that hole so that we don't lose the neighbor's cat, the neighbor's kid down the hole. We don't want that liability issue on our property.
Sure.
If I've got a couple of wells on my property that are still viable, but I only use one of them, just what you said right there, I want to make sure that that thing is capped so that in 5 years when the well I'm using something happens to it, I can go out there, pull that cap off, drop a pump in it, I'm ready to go. That's $1,000 as opposed to $40,000 in 5 years.
Yeah. So, but the cost of water wells just keeps going up. Which everything goes up everywhere. Everything is inflated. I mean, we know that. So, wells, 10, 12 years ago when I started, you could dig a lot of wells for $6, $8, $10,000. Now those $6, $8, $10,000 water wells are 20 or 25 or 30. Exactly. You fast forward another 10 years, they're gonna be 50, 60, 70. So I always tell folks, if you want to drill a water well, do it now. You're never gonna go wrong from a price standpoint. You're always gonna come out ahead.
Well, if you have the luxury of having a water supply company that will get water to your house, that's great, but I would really like to have that water well out there to be able to water the livestock, water the grass, keep water in the pool if I've got one, because you're getting charged per gallon for anything that goes, whatever those uses may be.
Right.
But if you're pulling out your well out of your ground, then there's a little bit of a charge to it, but there's not a charge every month like
it's kind of a big upfront cost, but it's defrayed over a long time.
For sure.
Whereas, so there's kind of pros and cons to both ways, but yeah, I mean, I think it would be good to have. If you can get a water meter, great. But if it'd be nice to have a well as backup too.
For sure.
So, but anyway, so I think Joel, thanks for that. That's a good. Hopefully, that's a good speech for everyone on how to do water wells on your property, where to put them, when to test them, and all that kind of good stuff. So we hope you found some use there, and we will catch you back on episode 15. Thanks.